today on Rappler. In a historic day for gay rights, the U.S. Supreme Court strikes down a law defining marriage as a union between a man and a woman. The Philippines plans to give the United States and Japan greater access to its military bases.
That means that in our lifetime, we would see some significant impact. Things are going to accelerate.
And a climate change expert warns of severe effects, especially on the poor, if global temperatures continue to rise. Hello, I'm Maria Ressa. Welcome to Rappler, your social news network. The United States Supreme Court on Wednesday overturns a ban on gay marriage, striking down the Defense of Marriage Act, or DOMA, as unconstitutional. DOMA defines marriage as a union between a man and a woman. In another decision, the court also repeals the controversial Proposition 8, allowing same-sex marriage in California to resume. U.S. President Barack Obama welcomes the news, saying, "This was discrimination enshrined in the law. The Supreme Court has righted that wrong and our country is better off for it." Voting 5-4, the court says DOMA deprives American citizens of equal liberty, a violation of the Fifth Amendment. The ruling will allow federal benefits like tax breaks and insurance for government employees in the 13 states that already recognize same-sex marriage. The ruling, though, angers social conservatives. American Family Association's Brian Fisher says, "With the DOMA decision, we have ceased to be a constitutional republic." In a May Gallup survey, 53% of Americans support same-sex marriage. Rappler's social media team holds a conversation on the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to strike down DOMA here in the Philippines, but with followers from all over the world. Here's what some of our followers had to say. Michael Madriaga tweets, quote, "It's truly a happy day for American gays. I hope I can get to see Filipinos being brave in fighting for gay rights." But at teacher.net answers, quote, "Not saying I'm against it, but before we dream of equal gay rights in the Philippines, let's push the execution of RH bill first. Prioritize." Jeff Crisostomo adds, quote, "We still have a long way to go before passing marriage equality legislation. We need an anti-discrimination law." It's Pride Month, and some student groups in the University of the Philippines celebrate with the LGBT community. Buena Bernal reports.
Over 50 gay rights advocates gather in a display of pride at the University of the Philippines. Marching in campus with a rainbow-colored flag, advocates send the message, "We're proud of who we are." The celebration comes at a historic time. A day after the United States Supreme Court overturns a ban on gay marriage. Do advocates see it happening in the Philippines too? Film student Peter says there is increasing tolerance but no genuine acceptance yet.
I'm still in the closet because number one, there are two things. Because number one, I fear rejection from my family. And number two, parang sumusunod na lang doon yung disappointment. Disappointment nila na I can't be a normal straight guy.
Organizers say today's Pride March is meant for people like Peter, to make them feel they are not alone.
Siguro kasi ang sarap maging malaya and ang sarap ipakilala yung sarili mo kung sino ka. So sabi nga ng isang author sa isang quote, sabi niya na, "Why fit in when you're born to stand out?"
But not everyone accepts gays, even in liberal UP.
With the country's strong Catholic influence, not every Filipino LGBT is as out as they would like to be. Most closet gays fear the conservative backlash.
These UP students brave the rain to make a statement. They say they will strive to make this campus a place where you can be out and proud. Buena Bernal, Rappler, Manila.
Starting July 1, Filipinos can apply for multiple entry visas for short-term trips to Japan. In a news release Tuesday, the Japan Ministry of Foreign Affairs announces relaxed visa rules for select Southeast Asian countries. Citizens of the Philippines and Vietnam are allowed to stay in Japan for a period of 15 days. The visas will be valid for up to 3 years. Indonesians can stay in Japan up to 30 days. Visa requirements for citizens of Thailand and Malaysia are lifted for short-term stays. The relaxed visa requirements are part of Japan's measure to increase tourism traffic. Japan is targeting 10 million tourists this 2013. Japan pledges to help the Philippines defend its remote islands as both governments express concern over China's moves to stake claims to disputed Asian waters. In a joint news conference with Philippine Defense Secretary Voltaire Gazmin, Japanese Defense Minister Itsunori Onodera says, "We agreed that we will further cooperate in terms of the defense of remote islands, the defense of territorial seas, as well as protection of maritime interests." Onodera says he is concerned the conflict over the South China Sea could affect the situation in the East China Sea of Japan. Gazmin welcomes Japan's offer of support for its poorly resourced military. Gazmin says, "We've agreed to continue our exchanges of information, exchanges of technology to help each other to make our defense relations stronger." Onodera and Gazmin also welcomed the increased military presence in Asia by their mutual ally, the United States. But Onodera clarifies Japan wants to avoid conflict with China. He says, "The current situation should not be changed with the use of force, but should be done through the rule of law." China claims most of the South China Sea, including waters close to its neighbors' coasts. In recent years, the Philippines complained of increased Chinese bullying in the contested waters. Last year, the Philippines says China occupied an atoll within the Filipino exclusive economic zone. Tensions between China and Japan also escalate over competing claims to the Japanese-held Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea. A U.S. destroyer joins the Philippine Navy's flagship for war games starting Thursday in a contested area of the South China Sea, or what the Philippines calls the West Philippine Sea. The 6-day exercises will be held off Zambales, close to Scarborough Shoal, which China insists it owns. Philippine Navy spokesman Lieutenant Commander Gregory Fabic says the war games are not meant to provoke China. He adds, while the exercises will be between Scarborough Shoal and the main island of Luzon, the focus is interoperability and not targeted against the Chinese. The exercises will involve 3 U.S. Navy vessels and the Philippines' flagship BRP Gregorio del Pilar. About 500 U.S. forces and another 500 Filipino troops will take part in the exercises. The Philippines says it's looking to give the United States and Japan greater access to its military bases. President Benigno Aquino says the Philippines will welcome increased U.S. military presence as tensions continue with China over the competing claims to the South China Sea. The government is drafting a plan that will allow U.S. forces to spend more time on Philippine bases. Defense Secretary Voltaire Gazmin says if and when there's agreement on the access, then there will be equipment coming in from the United States. He adds, this is something which can also be offered to Japan's military. Gazmin's statements indicate the Philippines plans to expand its standard military exercises with the two nations. Gazmin says the plan will not lead to new bases or a permanent U.S. presence in the Philippines. Foreign Affairs spokesman Raul Hernandez says President Benigno Aquino appeals for the life of a 35-year-old Filipina who's sentenced to execution in China for drug trafficking. Hernandez says the Filipina, whom the DFA did not identify, will face the death penalty anytime between Thursday and Monday, July 2. On Wednesday, the Supreme People's Court in Beijing affirms a lower court's decision sentencing the Filipina to death. The woman was convicted for smuggling 6.198 kilos of heroin in China. Hernandez says the woman, quote, has been going back and forth from Dubai, Hong Kong, and China up to 18 times since 2008. For each of these 18 rounds, she supposedly earned $3,000 to $4,000 or $132,000 to $172,000 pesos. Aquino writes an appeal letter to Chinese President Xi Jinping. Hernandez says, quote, the appeal letter states that for humanitarian reasons, this sentence should be commuted to life imprisonment. But Hernandez admits the Philippines failed in previous appeals for Filipinos on death row in China. He says, quote, we had other cases before, 4 cases, but in the end, the 4 were executed. He adds, we appeal to all Filipinos not to allow themselves to be involved in drug trafficking. Philippine stocks rise Thursday following large gains on Wall Street after hints the U.S. Federal Reserve would not reel in its stimulus program soon. The program aims to keep interest rates down and encourage investment. The Philippine Stock Exchange Index settles at 6,328, up 209.06 points or 3.42% up. Regional markets rise after the U.S. Commerce Department slashes its first quarter growth estimate to 1.8% from 2.4%. The downward revision raises the prospect the Fed will not pull in its stimulus program soon as it waits for the economy to show more signs of strengthening. Overnight, the Dow jumps 1.02%, the S&P 500 rose 0.96%, and NASDAQ adds 0.85%. Climate change expert Christoph Crepin warns of severe effects on the Philippines if global temperatures continue to rise. A World Bank report says there will be devastating impact on the environment even if global warming is limited to 2 degrees Celsius.
And so when we get back to the discussion we were having earlier in terms of sea level rise, in terms of intensification of storm, in terms of heat waves, in terms of acidification of the ocean with implication on coral reef, and from coral reef on fisheries, and from fisheries on livelihood, and so forth and so on. So basically what it means is that if we are on the path for a 4-degree world, by the end of the century, 280, 90, it means that we would be at 2 degrees in 20, 30 years. That means that in our lifetime, we would see some significant impact. Things are going to accelerate. So
Crepin says national and local governments must work together to prioritize solutions for climate change.
On the policy side, as I was mentioning earlier, we need to get some clear alignment between the national level, the sector level, the local level in terms of what needs to be done and where to put the priorities, and that's not quite there yet. And to reflect that in the budget process, to set in place a mechanism that allows to proactively allocate and budget on some of those priorities and be able to track, what is being done and therefore.
Kevin Rudd is sworn in as Australia's new Prime Minister Thursday, almost 3 years to the day since he was ousted from the job by Julia Gillard. The 55-year-old seals his dramatic return after a leadership ballot on Wednesday in which Gillard, the country's first female premier, loses a party room vote, forcing her retirement from politics. Rudd's resurrection marks a stunning turnaround for the former premier, who will now lead Labour to elections scheduled for September 14th. Polls predict Tony Abbott's Conservative opposition will win by a landslide. Well, let's now look at Rattlers Wrap for today, a list of the 10 most important events around the world you shouldn't miss. At number 3, 95-year-old anti-apartheid hero Nelson Mandela is now on life support, unable to breathe on his own. His relative, Napilisi Mandela, confirms this, saying, quote, "Yes, he is using machines to breathe. It is bad, but what can we do?" South African President Jacob Zuma cancels a planned visit to Mozambique Wednesday after visiting Mandela in the hospital. It was the first time he did so since Mandela was hospitalized nearly 3 weeks ago for a stubborn lung problem. Crowds gather outside the Pretoria hospital where Mandela is confined, singing hymns of prayer. At number 4, in a step towards reform, Pope Francis launches a sweeping study of the scandal-plagued Vatican Bank before a possible clear-out of top management at the Holy See. On Wednesday, the Vatican reveals the pontiff will take a hands-on approach, ensuring everything the special 5-member commission uncovers will be reported directly to him. The 76-year-old wants to know the judicial position and activities of the Institute for Works of Religion, which struggled to shake off its murky image because of persistent reports of shady dealings. The Vatican says the commission will have top-level access, allowing it access to all documentation. And at number 10, a new bird species is discovered in Phnom Penh in Cambodia. The Cambodian tailor bird, also named the Orthotomys chaktomok, was first spotted in 2009. More specimens have since been seen in regions around the city. Tests, which include plumage, songs, and genes, show the tailor birds are a completely new species. It's unusual to find undiscovered bird species in urban areas. The BBC says tailor birds live in a small area made up of dense scrubland in the floodplain of the Mekong River near Phnom Penh. For the full top 10, visit Rappler.com's The Wrap. 7-time winner Roger Federer and 2004 champion Maria Sharapova suffer humiliating defeats on an injury-plagued Wimbledon tournament. In his worst Grand Slam defeat in a decade, defending champion and third seed Federer loses to Sergei Stakhovsky, Ukraine's world number 116. Federer's defeat ends his run of 36 consecutive Grand Slam quarterfinal appearances. It was his earliest Wimbledon defeat since he was knocked out of the first round in 2002 by Mario Ancik. Sharapova's defeat on court 2 comes after she fell on 3 occasions and needed a medical timeout to treat a painful left hip. Third seed Sharapova loses to Portuguese qualifier Michelle Larcher de Brito, the world 131. The defeats come just 2 days after Rafael Nadal exited in the first round. They also occurred on a day when the famed grass courts of Wimbledon came under fire after 7 players either withdrew or retired with injuries. Speaking of injuries, Steve Darcis, who was responsible for Nadal's early exit, pulls out of the tournament because of a shoulder injury. There are reports suggesting the Wimbledon courts are to blame for the injuries, but the All England club, which hosts the tournament, denies this, saying, quote, "The court preparation has been to exactly the same meticulous standard as in previous years." The statement adds, quote, "Indeed, many players have complimented us on the very good condition of the courts." Every story on Rappler has a mood meter which gives you 8 emotions to choose from. Click how you feel and your vote comes down to the mood navigator in the middle of the front page. That crowdsources the mood of the day. It also gives you the top 10 stories that have affected our readers the most. These stories have gotten the most number of clicks, the most votes on their mood meters. If we take a look today, an interesting day because of DOMA, the Supreme Court decisions in the United States. Well, this is interesting. Homophobia at dangerous levels in Africa. You have 30% angry and 58% annoyed. Also, well, here's the DOMA, the big win for gays. U.S. court rejects DOMA. 45% happy, 48% sad, perhaps reflecting the conservative vote in the Philippines. And interestingly enough, a related story, Guide Charis Catholic bishops urge family. This is referring to Charis coming out, and you have, interestingly again, 20% sad, 28% angry, and 52% annoyed. As you can see today, most people are annoyed. Well, that's Rappler's newscast for today, Thursday, June 27th, 2013. Visit Rappler.com and watch our newscast Monday to Friday. Tell us how you feel on our mood meter and help us crowdsource the mood of the day. I'm Maria Ressa. As we say at Rappler, tomorrow begins today.